The act of preaching is both a joy and a privilege. But the learning curve from that first time that one steps into the pulpit or on the broad step to come to the point at which one begins to be comfortable can be steep and, to be honest, intimidating, especially if more seasoned preachers are listening. I have been lucky, though. For 9 months last year, I prepared and delivered a sermon every week. Once I shut the lights off in the church each Sunday, it was time to start on the following week's sermon. There really wasn't time to get nervous or fret over fine theological points or nuances in the scriptural passages. And although a canon from the bishop's staff was with me for a few months, her presence was nothing but supportive. Through this experience, I developed figurative homiletic muscles and truly did not have time to worry about difficult pericopes. It was dive in and figure it out week after week. My call here at St. Luke's has a different focus. No longer the sole clergy at a tiny parish, my primary responsibility is the chaplaincy at St. Luke's School, happily sprinkled with opportunities within this parish. So when weeks ago I glanced at the readings for today and saw, "Love God and love your neighbor as yourself," I giggled at the lowball that I thought Father Reynolds had thrown me when creating the preaching rota. I mean, seriously, this preaches itself, right? Right? Well, sure, on one level, it seems pretty straightforward. Even presiding Bishop Michael Curry distills it down to, if it's not about love, it's not about God. The word love, or some iteration thereof, is in almost every hymn that we sing. However, if this is so easy, so simple, so straightforward, why does Jesus say that loving God is the greatest, most important commandment? Not only that, he expands the commandment. He doesn't just give a vague, love God. He says, love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is big. I think that we often do not grasp the enormity of this commandment because we're looking at the English translation of the scriptures. Well, in English, we have one word for love. There are 4 different words for love in Greek. Phileo, kind of like Philadelphia, the love between friends. Eros, the love between partners. And storge, the love between family. And then finally, the biggie, agape. This is the word for love that's used in today's gospel. Agape is the universal, spiritual, selfless love that God has for us and that we strive to have for God. It's unconditional, at least on God's part. It's not passive. It is active. God chooses to love us, and we must choose to love God. Jesus also commands his disciples and us to love our neighbors as ourselves. Again, the word for love here is not phileo or storge, it's agape. We're meant to love each other and ourselves purely, actively, unconditionally. I'm not sure which of these is the hardest. I think that sitting here in the pews or hopefully in a comfortable seat in your home in Zoomland, listening to glorious music, praying together with like-minded folks, may make loving God and our neighbors relatively easy. I wonder if more than one of us each feels a catch when we say the general confession, making it more of a challenge to love ourselves unconditionally. What happens to that agape when the Mass is over? When we have had a bit of a nosh at coffee hour and then head off for our Sunday afternoons? This is where that agape truly becomes an active choice. Next week, during our celebration of All Saints' Day, we'll baptize several people into the household of God. In doing so, we will reaffirm our own baptismal vows. In the presence of very cute babies and small children dressed in white, we will be asked, if we will continue to participate in what Jesus taught his disciples about fellowship, resisting evil, and evangelism. And yes, that's really in there. We will be asked if we will seek and serve Christ in all people, and if we will strive for justice and peace among all people, and respect the dignity of every human being. I know from experience that it's easy to say, oh yes, of course I will, because I'm not saying yes alone. We're in this together. This congregation, this community will say these words together, supporting each other. And in that moment, the agape will be strong. How then do we reconcile the world beyond the doors of 487 Hudson Street? There are people in the neighborhood who are hungry and unhoused. I'm not alone in walking by many, perhaps thinking, well, I can't help everybody. How do we reconcile the tensions between people we know and love, and between people we have never met, but whose actions against each other draw us into supporting one side of an issue and condemning the other side? Is it even possible to love them? I admit that even though I do love God with my whole being, I struggle when confronted with the economic and social disparities that I see. I struggle with everything concerning the war in Gaza, praying for everyone involved. Friends of mine have lost loved ones. The ideals of all involved are important to each faction, yet are they really more important than the lives of babies and children? We could definitely ask that same question in this country as we reel from yet another shooting. Jesus was emphasizing these commandments to his disciples only a few days before he was crucified. He knew his time was running out, and he needed to ensure that his followers truly got the message. You have to love with your heart, soul, and minds, my friends. You have to actively choose that love. Just saying the words in public where everyone can hear you is not enough. You have to be active. For the disciples, that meant continuing to spread Jesus' teachings, continuing to heal people, feed people, and see the light of God in everyone. The disciples were not perfect, and neither are we. But that is never a reason to not do what we say we will do with God's help. Can we love God fully and completely when so much horrible stuff is going on in the world? It is precisely then that we have to actively choose. And how do we love God fully? By being in good, healthy, honest relationships with one another. By actively seeking and serving Christ in all people. By working for justice and peace nearby and further afield. And by looking for and celebrating the goodness, joy, and love that we do experience. Even a simple kind word, a smile, or a laugh can make a difference. Today, as deacon of the Mass, I have the honor of saying, as we prepare to leave, go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Let's do that. Amen.